In this video, we'll briefly run through the processes involved in planning and facilitating a Desmos activity. We'll look at finding and assigning an activity, as well as using the teacher dashboard and its embedded features. Throughout, we'll make note of things to consider when teaching remotely. But the first thing you'll want to do is create a free account. I'm already logged in and ready to go. To find an activity, you can type a topic in the search bar. For example, let's search for activities involving proportions. You can select an activity to see if it's a match for the content you had in mind. Click Student Preview to experience the task as your students would. Another way to find an activity is by browsing the featured collections on the left. For example, let's take a peek at linear functions. The Surrey Numeracy team has created grade-level collections that align with BC's learning standards. I'm going to pull up our Math 8 collection. Aside from considering content, think about your intent in assigning an activity to your students. Is it to introduce a topic? To develop new understanding? To practice skills or deepen knowledge? Or to apply learning to a novel problem or context? Once you've determined that an activity meets the needs of your students, you'll want to assign it. To assign an activity, first create a class code. Have your students go to student.desmos.com and enter the code, or just copy and paste the link and send it to them. This activity now shows up in your history. Note that you can have more than one class code per activity. This is helpful if you have more than one class doing the same activity. You may decide to bookmark or copy and edit an activity. If you adapt an activity, create a class code after you've made your changes. It'll show up in your custom activities. Let's take a closer look at an activity that has some sample student work. I'm going to return to the Lego prices activity. The summary view lets you see your class at a quick glance. From this table, I can see that 6 students have entered the activity. I can also see how they are progressing through the slides. In the teacher view, I can see student responses to each prompt. I can see the individual responses of all of my students at once, or I can click on an individual student and see their thinking as they move through the activity. Overlay is a very powerful feature. I can see all of the different sketches that students made in this slide on one grid. In the next slide, I can see a consensus being reached. Snapshots allow me to capture and share student ideas for class discussions. In the classroom, you can bring all of your learners together to discuss an interesting or important idea. Let's say that I wanted students to compare or analyze these two graphs. I could ask, what's the same? What's different? Or, can you make a case for each graph? Remotely, this is a more challenging conversation to have, but you could take a screenshot to send to your students to discuss within teams. You might have noticed these three other features in the upper left of the teacher dashboard. Let's look at pacing, which has potential during these times. Maybe you'd like to restrict students to the first two slides. This way, you could have them defend their sketches, again in teams, before getting to the data. Or you might want to restrict students from seeing the answer before everyone has had a chance to solve the problem. The best way to learn how to teach using Desmos activities is to dive in and give one a try. Once you do, you and your students will be hooked.